All right, well, folks are joining. Feel free to add your attendance to the meeting notes.
Ivan, are you in the US now? Or like, what time zone are you in?
Yeah, I'm actually in New York City this week. Only this week, though. I'm off to Europe on Saturday.
Awesome.
Finally get to meet everyone in the same time zone, which is good. Or at least daylight hours.
Yeah. So I think we give it a couple minutes before we get started.
I'll give it like another minute.
Michael, are you running today's meeting?
Oh, if you want to run it, go ahead. I might get pulled. Yeah, I might get pulled into something. So.
Okay. Awesome. Let's give it a minute. Again, let me put the link in the chat for those that I'll put in your name it. Okay, I think it's 5 minutes past. Let's get started. Welcome everyone to the community meeting for GUAC. As usual, meeting will be recorded. It's going to be posted somewhere, probably on YouTube. And usual code of conduct applies. If you haven't already, please put your name and affiliation in the Google Doc for the meeting notes. And yeah, today we have quite a few things on the agenda. We have quite a few updates in terms of the APIs that we have, a little governance update. We have a new maintainer, and we have some demos and like cool things to show. So I think we will likely have quite a bit for today's agenda. If there are things that folks do want to chat about, feel free to add them to the agenda. I think we'll try and prioritize those as they come up. So before we get started, we always have the new member introduction. So anyone that's new to the call, I think most folks, I recognize the names. Noah, do you want to do an introduction?
I can introduce myself. Yeah, my name's Noah Spawn. I'm a security researcher with Open University, on my own time. And then my day job is at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I work in a security research lab as a software engineer. And so this whole realm is interesting. I've been around GUAC for a little bit, just tangentially around it. But like you, I also might get called in on something different. So I was hesitant to turn my camera on or become much of this meeting. But
welcome. Hello. I guess Ivan, this is the first time on the meeting, but we've heard your voice and seen your face. If you want to do a quick one.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't remember me, I'm the guy who's working on the back end for Postgres, MySQL, etc. Put a face to the name.
Cool. And hi, Tom and Rachel. Thanks for joining. Let's see. So I think let's get well, I guess Tom and Rachel, do you want to do introductions? I think it's the first time maybe on this call.
Sure. So I'm Tom Hennon.
Oh,
sorry. Did you mean me, Tom, or a different Tom?
No, I meant yeah. I just realized it's Rachel's name showed up because you're in her office.
Yes, that's right.
So Rachel on this call.
So I'm Tom. I'm not Rachel, and I'm a tech lead for many things, software supply chain security related here at Google, and I'm interested in what is going on with GUAC.
So I guess first on the agenda, there's we're announcing our new maintainer, Jeff. Jeff, do you wanna? I guess I give a quick one. Jeff has been helping out with a lot of stuff, all the way from like adding new CI checks, GraphQL testing, end-to-end testing. He's been working a lot on the backends as well, as he did a lot of work with the in-memory backends for the initial GraphQL implementation, and many other things that I probably am missing. So, Jeff, do you want to say a couple of things?
Yeah, just like thanks for the recognition. Want to keep working on all the different parts I'm working on, especially like CLI, like user experience and CLI, UX and stuff like that. I like a lot, and the docs, things like that too. Working on I had the proposal out for license compliant or legal compliance information in GUAC, so I'm starting the coding on that to get the actual feature in so that we can do that. But yeah, happy to be working on the project and continue. Hey, Bob, you have a question?
Yeah, actually about the license compliance, if I can ask real quick and not derail the meeting. So is that mostly just tagging artifacts and packages with the license as discovered, or is that actually doing like compatibility matrix? So if you're using your HEPL and your AS?
No compatibility matrix. I think that would be like legal advice. But yeah, so tagging, because it's the licenses will have like not single, like kind of singleton nodes, but like a node that's like this is the GPL 3.0 or later node. But then there'll be like the existing certify nodes that will say like this SBOM says that this package is this license, and it will also have a license expression. So it could be ands and ors. And then linking to all the licenses found in that expression so that you can do graph queries to see which paths lead to which licenses. And also capture the attribution information. If there's any copyright that's in the SBOM, we want to go ahead and add that so that you could do something like generate a notice file from GUAC for your package.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Thanks again, Brandon. Appreciate it, and the rest of the team.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you. If you don't mind putting a link, I know you had a design doc out for the legal stuff. Maybe if you can put it in the notes, that'd be awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. With that, I think we are going through some updates to GraphQL. That means breaking changes. Yay. So, Pop, do you wanna kick this off?
Yeah, so I'll start off. So first thing I'll go through, and this was actually Bob on the call here, his idea actually. So he was, and we were chatting through it. You know, I think it was a blind side on our spot when we first started this project. We made it very restrictive. We made like, you know, packages and sources and everything very generic, and we made vulnerabilities very specific. So I think to remediate that, and you know, Bob opened the issue. We kind of chatted through it, and we kind of came up with an approach to make it more generic. So now it's, you know, any type of vulnerability, whether it's vendor specific even, right, can be actually captured. And then you can add, you know, relationships to it and so forth. So I'll quickly chat through that first. So I'll talk through all the vulnerability changes. Right, these are going to be breaking changes, of course. So that's why we did cut a release yesterday. So the release was there so that anything, and you know, the existing demos and everything else will work. And then we can, you know, iterate and update all that stuff. And I apologize, they're mowing the lawn outside, so there's some background noise if that's coming through. Okay, that's good. So the AirPods are doing its job, so that's good. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So the first thing I kind of want to show off is like exactly, you know, what this kind of looks like. So all these updates have been made in the in-memory backend as well as Orango. And so what happens is now, right, so now we can imagine packages or the vulnerability kind of functioning similar to how packages and sources behave, right? They have an initial type node, and then they have a vulnerability IDs associated with it, right? They're individual nodes. So you can think about the type being a node. So it'd be a vulnerability type node, which could be a CVE, you know, a GitHub SA, and you know, whatever else you want to in there, and then a specific vulnerability ID underneath it, right? So everything kind of links. So if there are multiple CVEs, right, they will all kind of link. These would be all multiple nodes within the database. Similarly, right, for OSV and so forth, right, there'll be multiple nodes, and you can see it could be, you know, your OSV and CVEs and so forth could be overlapping, right, because it could be the same and so forth. And finally, we have a no vulnerability node, right? This one is, you know, you specify a no vulnerability type and then you put in an empty ID for it, and then that's how it kind of behaves. So similarly, like, you know, with the GraphQL program, so I updated all this. So all this stuff is actually merged into main. So you can actually, in the examples, we have an example document in there. So you can copy and paste this into the GraphQL. Just run the, you know, the in-memory backend with the test data that we have. So you can just, it's like a --GQL-test data, right? And then loads all this test data in there. Then you can just mess around in the GraphQL playground. So, you know, you can see, for example, the first query, right, it's not doing anything. It's not specifying a vulnerability. So by default, it gives you everything back. And then I'll come back to these two because those are special cases. But you can imagine, like, okay, I just want the CVE type, right? So it just gives me all the CVEs. And then if I want a specific vulnerability ID itself, it will filter on that. And then so forth, right? And it can be specific to it, like, oh, I want type and ID specified, and it'll do exactly that again, right? So similarly for the other types, right? I can do that. OSV, right? Oh, like I said, OSV is kind of special, right? Because it could contain, you know, other things in there. It could be other vulnerability IDs that could be matching other types. So for example, if I do the third one here, right, you can see that there are two matching IDs, right? Because there's one that's the type GHSA and as well as OSV. So both of them come back. And if I want to do specifically that one, right, then I can just do the second one here, then only the OSV one. Whoops, wrong one. What did I do? Oh, I have the wrong thing in there. Okay, I think this is not ingested actually. That's probably why. So let me actually ingest this, and I will just copy this in here. If I do this specific one, make sure it's 2. So, right, and then I'll come back in the ID and so forth. So the vulnerability filter, right? It now has that no vulnerability Boolean in there, and this is more specific to certified vulnerabilities, but you can actually interact with it here also. So what happens is, so if I click this, so if it's set to false, right? So if the no vulnerabilities are set to false, then it's going to return you everything. So it's going to return, every ID, everything, including the no vulnerability. But if you say, I only want, you set this to true, and it's only going to return you just the no vulnerability itself. And similarly, right, if you omit this completely, which is the same thing as this one above right here, right, then it's just going to be, then it's just going to return you everything again, right, same way, including the no vulnerability node. The thing that it does not allow, and we have a check in there for this, is that if you set it to be like, oh, I don't want any vulnerabilities, but then you set it to be like the type to be vulnerability, then it's going to complain to you, be like, oh, you said no vulnerabilities, but you're specifying a type of vulnerability, right? So that doesn't make sense. So just throwing out an error there for that. And then moving on to certified vulnerability, right? We have 3 other verbs in there, right? Certified vulnerability. This is actually changed to a vulnerability equal. So we renamed is vulnerability to vulnerability equal to be more consistent, and it makes more sense. And then certified VEX, right? So kind of walking through the certified vulnerability. Similarly, right, we can search what just happened. So something happened there, but okay, we'll come back to that. I don't understand. Of course, it's when you do a live demo, something always breaks.
Real.
Yeah. Hold on, let me change my branch over. Okay. Good. Now it's completely blank. Okay. All right. So something broke, and I apologize. But basically, which was I just tested this before the meeting, which I don't understand what happened. Okay. Well, anyways, I'll come back to this. But basically, if there's time left in the meeting, I'll figure out what the problem is. But you can imagine similarly, like how I was returning, specific vulnerabilities, right? Is it's going to return that type and ID now, so forth. At the end, and I'll show this off if you have time at the end. But basically, which is one of the I think Dijon added this capability. But basically, if you want to specify, oh, I don't want any vulnerabilities returned, right? Just return me everything that's just give me all the vulnerabilities and don't give me anything has no vulnerability. And you can now specify that using the false boolean that we saw before. And then if you do it to true, if you set the no vulnerability to true, then it'll automatically just give you all the packages that don't have any vulnerabilities. And again, right, this last one will fail because you're saying that it's conflicting information, so it kind of fails there. The equals basically what this does now, similar to what it did before. I think it was more restrictive, right? It's like an OSV maps to one of these things. Now it could be at any type, right? Any vulnerability maps to another vulnerability, right? So if, for example, like a GitHub GHSA maps to a CVE, right? You can now say that. You can say like, oh, these two things are addressing the same thing and so forth. So it's no more restrictive to just one like OSV only kind of thing. So you can have it between multiple things, as you can see here. And then finally, VEX is kind of the same thing, right? You can still give it the specific type and ID. The only thing here, right, obviously, is you can't have no vulnerability here, right? Because that doesn't make sense. So that's the only thing here. But other than that, it behaves the same. So all these changes have been pushed out. The specific one, which I'm pretty sure what's causing this issue, is there's a PR open that has this no vulnerability boolean in there, so that you can filter between it. So I think that's the branch I'm on, so that's why it's breaking. So I'll fix that up, and we're getting that pushed out. Okay, any questions on that piece? Oh. All right, and really quick, I just wanted to touch upon the other 2 changes that are in the works. So the first one is, right, removing the, and this is an issue, and I'll link it afterward in the community meeting notes. But basically what this is doing is that for a lot of the mutations, so when we ingest a bunch of things, and I can zoom in a little bit here, we were returning like the actual object back, right? Which is not necessary, and we realize that a bunch of a lot of the backends can actually be optimized if they don't have to return everything back, right? If they can return the IDs back, right? That's kind of what we care about, right? Then so we changed that, so it just returns the IDs because we don't really there was no use for it basically to return the actual object back itself. So now it just returns the IDs back. And the IDs themselves actually don't have to return, right? It can be set to, like, if you can't even return the IDs, then you can just have an empty string kind of come back also. That's also okay. As long as there's a way to confirm, right, that the database did accept all this stuff and no error came back out, then that's okay also. So that's a change that that's going to be made. And one of the contributors, actually, our community members, Aurora, yeah, he's going to be making that change. So he's working on this right now. Just wanted to show that off quickly. And then the last one, which is what I'm going to work on next, is adding in the scores, specifically like vulnerability scores. So I'm going to scroll down here because we chatted about this in terms of what it should look like. So we're going to have a new type of vulnerability metadata node, basically, which will have a one-to-one mapping to a specific score. And this will also obviously map to the vulnerability ID node, right? So there's going to be a relationship between the vulnerability ID to the specific, the metadata node, basically. Yes. And then the whole point is to basically add another score node that does a one-to-one mapping, as you can see here. A score node that's going to contain the actual type of the node, type of the score itself, as well as the score, right? The score itself. So for example, if it is the CVSS, right, then the type would be CVSS as an enum kind of thing, and then the score specifically. So depending on the version, right, if it's CVSS version 2 or version 3, right, the score would be set here, but then the severity could be different, right? So we wanted to separate all that out. And then we could also include stuff like the EPSS and so forth, right? There's a bunch of scores that we want in there. So again, it makes it very flexible for, the community to put in whatever kind of score they would like to see in there. And then, create queries, and then based off the score and based off the type, you can just determine the severity, right, on the end. So GUAC is not going to store the severity because, again, it's very specific to the version of the score as well as the type of the score, right? So then that can be done after the fact. Any questions? All right, thank you. Yeah, and if we get time at the end, I might, I can show this off. Yeah, I apologize that it broke. So, I mean, then it's real, right? I'm not faking any of this stuff, so.
All right, I think it's my turn to hopefully have a demo that doesn't break. Let me share my screen. So gonna be showing two things. The first one is the PR1125, which basically changed it so that initially when we had its dependency, it would point from a instance of a package version to a package name. So this is a case because we were saying like, if you are depending on a package, you could depend on a specific version, but then you could also say like, because if I got the information from a package log file or package.json file in npm, it would say, okay, I'm dependent on this package, but only like a particular version, and the same thing for Java, right? So I think we have source dependencies that point to a range, and then we have like build dependencies that point to a specific version within the range. And the issue we had with that was that it was a little bit difficult to do the mapping. We had something called the snowflake problem, which I think we talked about in the call. So to make it easier to navigate, the change basically says that initially we are saying that a package dependency will point to the package name, and then you would resolve it from package range. So for example, we would say, originally we would say, okay, here's the package. It depends on this other package. And it would basically, we wouldn't even have to specify the version here, right? So initially how it would look like is I ingest this dependency. Oh, sorry, I have to ingest the packages first before I'm ingesting the dependency. So I would say, okay, Ubuntu dpackage depends on OpenSSL, all versions, so it'll point to the name. And then what we're introducing here is we add the ability to say now I want to match on the specific version. So I can ingest dependency over here that points to a specific version. And we can see as we query them here that what's happening. My browser is okay. My browser is stalling. 1 second. Oh, whoops. I am actually whoops. Okay.
Demo gods again.
Yeah, no, I think I accidentally queried the entire database of things again. I have a GUAC instance that is running on my computer where I don't know where it's running. But let me see what I can just show you here. So it was like Debian, Ubuntu, what was it again? Debian, Ubuntu, ePackage. Right. So if I click on this now, right. So you can see this package now basically what originally was that this would depend on OpenSSL with the version range, but now you see when I created the two different dependencies, now I can point the dependency to a specific version, and I also can point it to a specific range. So in the case where this was a source dependency, it would say like I'm depending on OpenSSL, but version 2.x. So it can be any version range, and that would resolve, right? If it's 2.x, it would not resolve to this 3.0, and so on. So that is kind of like an effort to make it easier to navigate the dependencies rather than having to resolve the ranges, even though it's pointing to a specific version. Okay, any questions on that? If not, I can get to this other demo. So the next demo I want to show is on some patch planning work that our intern Rebecca worked on. She's ended her internship, so she's not here to be able to present her work. Is just going to show it on her behalf. And so the idea behind this was one, we created a new GUAC1 CLI utility to be able to get the blast radius, and on top of the blast radius, be able to tell you, given a bad package or a package with a vulnerability, like what is the series of steps to perform to be able to remediate the vulnerability within the organization. So initially, when we're thinking about it in terms of teams getting vulnerability notices, for example, you have a container image and someone tells you have a vulnerability in this, but it depends on another package that depends on another package. And so you're not in a good position to be able to fix the vulnerabilities. And this CLI kind of tells you, what the path to fixing the vulnerability is. And if there's point of contacts, it will show them as well. So this is a demo that's using the GUAC data set as usual. And yeah, so in this case, by the way, can anyone see the full screen, or is it visible? I can't see it.
Yep.
Yep.
Hey, it's good.
Okay, cool. So over here you can see it's a GUAC1 query patch. It says like this is the poll that kind of we're looking at. You can specify a search step. And what you see from executing this is right. So over here you see a couple of things. So you have over here frontier levels. So basically each frontier tells you let me go back a little bit. Each frontier where you can see, you know, you start with the package that we were saying was bad. So you say, okay, let's fix this package first, specifically this version of the package. And after we fix this and patch this, we can then go on to the next thing that relies on it, right? So in this case, CellGo depends on this Antler library. And so in order to go ahead patching the things that are above it, you have to fix this one instead, right? So the next frontier would be Kubernetes API server, and these all depend on CellGo, right? So they don't directly depend on Antler. So we can't patch like the Kubernetes API server directly because there is a transitive dependency. So this basically tells us that, look, here are the list of things that you have to fix before you eventually are able to fix the Kubernetes API server, or in this case, you know, if you go down further in the frontier, there are more libraries also, like the docker.io caddy container. So we click on this, we kind of show the visualization of it as per usual. I think most of you have seen this, but over here, basically we're visualizing what the dependency of the blast radius looks like, right? So you have Antler here, you have you have Antler here, you have the sorry, I'm just gonna pause there. You have Antler here, you have the Kubernetes API servers that all depend on CellGo. CellGo depends on Antler, and therefore, you know, that's why the patch planning goes that way. On top of that, if we go back to the CLI, we see that we have like informational nodes and point of contacts. So the idea is to hopefully be able to, once we have point of contacts, information available, whether it should maintain the files, or within your organization you have a team ID or a team email. This will all appear within the patch planning. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Any questions on that?
If I can just ask, as a bit of a noob in like this space of dependency management, I I can see how it is presenting things as frontiers, and I think what is implicit is like, hey, user of like Kubernetes, you have this problem. It's not your direct problem. It's because of this other thing. And I'm guessing that the explicit message that we want to be sending people is like, you have two choices. You either get your upstream to like fix the problem, or you replace that package, right?
Right. Or I think the third option could be go evaluate whether the use of that package is you're actually like running the critical path of that, which is like generate a back statement and then do the analysis there. So I think the idea is it's not built into the current CLI yet, but the idea is like, oh, if you did have a back statement and it said that it wasn't affected, as long as all paths to the vulnerable, the bad package have a back statement that says it's not affected, then basically it will tell you don't have to worry about it. So cool. If not, I think let's go to the next one. Shafi, do you wanna show us some visualizer updates?
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Shafi. For those of you who don't know, I'm a software engineer at Kusari, and as of late, I've been working on the GUAC visualizer, making some small updates here and there. So I'm just going to go through a high-level overview of like some of the changes that have gone through since its inception and some of the more recent stuff as well. Yeah, so let me share my screen here. Cool. Can you guys see my screen?
See it, bro.
Cool. Cool. So this is what like the visualizer sort of looks like right now as it stands. I have like an absolute path here with a set of node IDs. These are the node IDs. This is where it's being displayed on here. So we've since the beginning we've added some features such as highlight nodes. So we can highlight certain parts of like the nodes, like the certified vulnerability, the builders, SBOMs, artifacts. And so another sort of feature that we've also added to the GUAC visualizer is, let's just go through like a random package here, are the breadcrumb navigation systems, as you may have used before. And this is okay. This works. It shows like the label that you are currently like last on, and then you can sort of go back and forward. It's not perfect right now, but we'll see like there has been some updates to make it better. Yeah, so let's do that. So I have, first, let me show you some of the changes are already approved and we're just waiting for them to be merged. But I have a branch that I have locally that with all those changes, and I'll just show you them quickly here. And so this is the sort of like the updated GUAC visualizer. And it looks almost the same, but there have been some improvements. For instance, we are, if we sort of like click through some of the nodes here randomly, just for visualization's sake. Oh, sorry, I need to restart because we restarted the server. If we sort of go through some nodes here at random, we'll see like we have like the current node we're on right now is highlighted. And this is important. Like if we want to go back, we can do that. We can see where we're at. And we can also like now click on a node so that we can go back to wherever we are in the stack. And I think it's going to be kind of useful. Let's say like if we wanted to maybe, I was thinking of like we could sort of save the state somewhere like in a cookie, or if we wanted to like load it later or export it somewhere, we could do that. What else? Also, now we also have a pretty janky tooltip. This is like when you right click on a node, you are able to get more information from it. You wouldn't be able to do that before. And there's some information here that doesn't make sense. Like we should have this. So we're going to get rid of that. But I think this is a good stepping stone into like getting more out of a node. Like what can we see on the GUAC visualizer? And also like if you, for instance, wanted to see a node in isolation, you can do that, like just taking its ID and putting it in the URL and seeing everything about that node that way. You can do that. Yeah, and also currently I'm working on a small feature where you are able to search for vulnerabilities directly inside of the GUAC visualizer. So yeah, this is pretty much like where we stand right now. And this is really like the tip of the iceberg. A lot of stuff could be better. So currently, we also started looking at how to make the visualizer more robust, right? Since this is like an experimental sort of testing the waters type of thing. We're seeing what works, what doesn't. We've been looking at libraries like React Flow, which might be better. Let me just quickly show y'all. The reason why we might move to something like React Flow instead of what we're using right now, React Force Graph, is because React Flow is a lot more, you can customize your nodes and your edges a lot more. You have that freedom. With React Force Graph, the one that we're using right now, it's a little bit harder because you have to like sort of make a lot of workarounds with the code and the logic, and it could get a little bit messy. What else? React Flow is also more performant. Sometimes you'll notice inside of our current visualizer, like if there's hundreds of nodes, it could get a little bit slow, and the browser might get slow. This is not good, and this might be a limitation on how React Force Graph has it. Again, you might have to make workarounds, and it could get messy that way, where we could just use React Flow to sort of handle all of that, where it's like sort of abstracted away. So it's performant. It's designed to like sort of handle complex structures and thousands of nodes. And each node in React Flow is like a component. So depending on whatever artifact we have, like we could sort of customize that component to however we want it to be. And yeah, it's also just well documented. I think it has a big community. Their team is consistently working on updates. I think it would be a good step in the right direction, I think, for our visualizer to take. Any questions so far?
Not a question, but I guess a comment. Given the new dependency changes, I noticed you added the function that shows the name of the dependency with the the dependency as well. So that now that the dependency can point to a version as well, that may change a few things, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Anything else?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shafi. This is great work. It's a ton of stuff that I think all of us wish we could do. Awesome. So I think we have one more, and yeah, Path, maybe we can double back to that the demo again if we have time. Bob and Dejan, about signature storage.
Bob, you wanna do this?
Yeah, so I mean, just like we have collectors or certifiers, whatever, for vulnerabilities, I saw y'all have a verifier for SigStore signatures, but I'm not exactly sure what it does. But like, I would like to actually be able to store signature nodes inside of GUAC too, so that I could say, you know, what all artifacts has prodsec at redhat.com signed, or what artifacts has Bob signed, or is this thing signed by whoever. If we could store that into GUAC so I could do queries across it all, that'd be lovely. Like, I realize all the actual SigStore metadata should remain in SigStore inside of Recore, but to have the pointer so that I can go verify once I could scrub out what I want. Does that make any sense? Does that exist? Am I just not seeing it, or am I crazy?
It's a bit of a very loaded question. Or maybe a very loaded answer. So this is something that we've been through like multiple iterations on. There are 2 or 3 very hard problems in implementing that. But depending on what you're looking out for it, because so one of the initially we had the idea of having identities, and then identities attesting documents, right? And having those, so it's kind of like an overlay of like the signature graph over the actual GUAC ontology graph. One of the difficult things in doing that is the verification and query part of it. I think there isn't quite a good way to express you know, is it like a key ID, and like, do we want to be able to verify this when ingesting GUAC, right? So for example, given a DC envelope, we would have to verify a signature. Then we would have to know like which keys are in my policy to verify it. So that whole verification process and query based on the verification is a little bit complicated, and I think we have a design doc that talks about that. But in the case where if we have like a trusted information that we want to say, okay, here's a signature, or I know someone signed this particular document, I think we should be able to easily encode that. But I think handling the verification and the verification of the signatures going into GUAC it's a very hard problem.
I guess my first mental model was like I could probably abuse certify good and say that the origin is whoever the identity is with the signer, and then also attach in a record record entry or something. And like where GUAC is not having to do the verification, I'm still asserting it from externally through a collector or whatever. But at least I have a tag there that then I could hopefully query against. And then once I scrub that out, then if I need to double check, I can go check with Record and do the tough stuff and make sure all the signatures line up and the identity is who I think it is. But at least just to have a breadcrumb in GUAC saying that this was signed. Honestly, though, given the SIG store could be infinite number of signatures for a given artifact, that's challenging too. So like my mental model too is that my collector would only look for whatever subset white list of signatures that I care about in my GUAC instance.
I also would take a look at the has metadata predicate. I think we added that about a month back. So that lets you define the string of basically a key value path, so you can just retrieve signatures that way. We also introduce let me find the code for this. We have a way of ingesting predicate documents, but I think we still recommend just talking to the GraphQL API, the mutation API for now. But if that's something that you wanna translate to files and ingest, there's a way. It's hidden behind a danger flag. But if you want to use that, we can make it accessible.
Yeah, I think there's an existing issue 75 that I linked in there too. That was that original that contains that document in terms of like chatting through, like attaching those identities and so forth, and signatures. So if you want to take a look at that.
And is has metadata that can be attached to anything?
Packages, artifacts, and let me bring it up. Packages, source, artifact. It's this one right here.
I haven't rebased in a while, so I have not really looked around. I was waiting for the vulnerability changes, and then I'll update.
Yeah, so yeah, this has metadata. If you need it for anything more, I think we should be able to add to the subject.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's another use case around criticality that came up. So I think initially, the discussion was that we just bundle most of the things that people want to do has metadata, and once we have like a good idea of like which ones should be standardized, or we want to optimize a little bit more, we'll make it its own predicate. I guess next one, Dejan, you had compressed file support.
I don't know if you have time for this, if Parth wants to do a demo. But, just a quick question. Again, thinking about the large file support and everything. So you already have a colleague started working on the S3 stuff in Go, because that's part of your architecture for large file support, and it's in line what we're doing in justification efforts. It's a similar architecture, so it makes sense to do that. But I was thinking maybe what do you think about supporting ingesting compressed SBOMs and VEXes? Because that could be a shortcut to a lot of use cases, because even the biggest one I saw, like 100 megs, when compressed, they are like 10 or 15 megs, which is something we can then transfer over nets and things like that. So would it make sense to consider that or not?
Yeah, I think so. So I guess we had a discussion on this also around the nets thing, and I think at least inclination now is to kind of like not use the nets for now.
Yeah.
And just have the collector do it.
The issue with collector, so the nice thing is about nets is that opens the collecting for a wider ecosystem, because then you can just get your bytes pushed into nets and don't think about parsing anything. If you want to, for example, do a collector in Rust, we would need to implement all the parsing in Rust and then call GraphQL manually, which might support at some point, but it's not a trivial thing to do. Yeah. So I'm just thinking what would be a way to do something like this without using nets. So something that we can reuse all the existing code base of GUAC, right? And just collect things from these different sources in different languages and things like that. Yeah, it's not something we need an answer now. Just to put a problem in the people's heads, so we can think about it.
Would like a pipe into a process that's been taught the GraphQL work?
Something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure myself. Yeah. Yeah.
So ignoring the problem of the nats limitation, what was the use case for zip or compressed files?
So for example, at the moment, I implemented S3 collector in Rust, which basically gets a file from S3 and then gets it through the nets, and then the Go ingester gets the bytes and do all the stuff, right? So, and we have a problem of sending large files to nets. Yeah, that's
yeah, I don't think we've like made the decision to like move away from nats. I think it's still just kind of like an open question of where things go and how the use cases come and how we, where we see what we need to support in the future. So yeah, kind of as of right now, we're just kind of like, we're not worried about the message size problem, but we're also not like removing nats. So I think if you have the Rust collector, like that's awesome. I don't see any reason not to support a compressed file. Yeah.
So is the example of compressed file just like a gzip, like what format are we looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that should be pretty easy to implement.
Yeah.
So
that's why I'm attracted to it.
I think it's definitely worth making an issue too. Yeah, it's definitely worth making an issue, and I think something that we should support out of the box, anyways. I think because a bunch of people usually have a bunch of zip files or whatever else they have, SBOMs or whatever they have in there. So might as well take that in.
Are highly compressible with the JSON and repetition and everything. So
yes, it's a good starting fix, like a band-aid, like you said, for nats. Actually,
okay.
And our parser handles like nested structures as well. So
yeah,
that's perfect. We can just implement the compression. That's not.
Do you want
the file?
Do you want to create an issue, Dijon? I think that's a great one. I think that's a great idea.
I mean, thinking about now, I mean, it can be a separate gesture as well, because maybe people would want just to, put a lot of files into one archive and just ship that to GUAC, and we can handle that as well, right? No matter nuts or not, right? I don't know. Okay, I'll think about open issue and we can discuss it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna also get more of what your thoughts on like if we can make because the NATS issue is the NATS limit makes it so that we can't have anything more than 64 megabytes. But there will be a response with 64 megabytes. But short of like adding a new server and a bunch of additional things, there's like quite a bit of overhead in terms of like working around that limit. So, but I see a point that we want to be able to not need to implement the parsers in every single language, right? So not sure what the best solution for that is. Whether it's like maybe the ingester is a server that we talk directly to it, dump the file, and then returns to GraphQL, or we have a binary that just like pipes in the file and spits out the GraphQL as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, sorry for hijacking the last minutes with something. I saw your architecture proposal, but I'm afraid it could be too complicated to like now add some Minio and all that kind of things for people that don't need it. I mean, we do that in our project, but for different purposes. So
that's the reason why we were like, okay, let's put pause on this, because it's a lot of work for. I'm not sure whether we need to incur that cost, since like it makes it just so much harder for people to run it.
Yeah.
So
maybe a REST endpoint for uploading things. I don't know. Yeah. Could be also a solution. I don't know.
Oh yeah, just have the ingester run a gRPC service. Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
That takes in the blob.
I'll open an issue, or maybe a comment on the existing one about large file support, so we can take it there.
Awesome.
Because I think that there's one more issue that a colleague of ours worked for, because it's not just sending a file. Also, if it's a file like huge, we don't probably want to load it all in memory before start parsing it. So maybe do something around that we can do that sequentially or
yeah.
Well, that's again another can of worms, right?
I don't think S1 files are easy to pass in the stream, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, no, these are very good points. I think like if you can open the issue for the compression and then one for the handle pick, or just comment on the existing one.
Okay.
Yeah, those are valuable discussions we wanna to address. Cool. We're at time, so thanks everyone again. We'll see you at office hours or at the next meeting. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.